living in York at the moment. I've been here for 20 years. Presently living in a York Housing Association. I've been there just over a year. Prior to that, I was with, 2 years ago, I was in hospital with alcohol addiction. I'd had quite a long extended binge, ended up in hospital in a coma. I was there for about 2 weeks, and during that period, quite rightly, my landlady said she didn't want me back, so I basically had nowhere to live in York. So from hospital I moved to I was there for a couple of months. Then I moved into one of the properties that was shared accommodation. That was what they classed as a tier 2, tier 1 being tier 2, the shared accommodation. I was only there about a month because it was really bad. The people that were there were quite badly in addiction. Fire alarms going off daily basis, usually 2-3 o'clock in the morning when they were putting the oven on, falling asleep. So I complained about that to people. They were very quick. They got me moved from there to the place I was at. Again, that was the shared accommodation, a tier 2 place, which I was very lucky. It was a very nice room. I was there for about 6 months when I had a relapse. I was under quite a lot of pressure at the time, and I wasn't dealing with it very well. Particularly, they were looking to move me on to my own place, and the job centre was on my back about getting back to work, and rather than sort of talking, I kind of bottled it up. I had a bit of a relapse, well, a very big relapse. I went back to the 12-week programme. That's been sober just about 2 years now. Then the whole COVID things hit. Just at the time they were looking at moving me out again. So that was back on sort of reserve. And then, it was last July, I was offered a place on my own place, which I took, and I've been there for, as I said, just over a year now. I found it, at the time, as I said, because I didn't really have any options of accommodation wise, they made it clear that as long as I sort of made the effort, it would be a very short stepping stone to moving on through. They have the 3-tier system. So, to me it was just a stepping stone. And at the time I was doing my first time, which was a 12-week rehab programme, which was up during the day. And then I was doing sort of meetings in the evening. So I wasn't really actually physically in the building very much. I tried to avoid being there as much as I could. It wasn't a particularly pleasant environment to be in. And obviously, they do have issues with sort of like alcohol and drug use within the building. I think it became clear to people there at the time that I wasn't interested in that. It was offered on a few occasions when I first moved in, and I just knocked it back, and after that, I think people in general just left me to do my thing, and then I was only there a couple of months. Again, I was quite lucky because going from hospital, they hold accommodation for people in hospital that are discharged with nowhere to go, so they move people on as quickly as possible. So I was only there a couple of months. To be brutally honest, I don't remember much of it. It is quite a big blank. I do have sort of quite bad memory problems. Always have, but obviously it's been made a lot worse. In general, it's just general feelings about it that I have now seems to be quite positive. I don't know whether, because when I was there, I literally had no options, I couldn't move back with the family, that wasn't an option, and, there was nothing there, so general feelings I have about that time was quite positive, that, they did show me that there were options available and that, you could work through the system to get yourself back on your feet kind of thing. So in general, quite a positive. Well, it was them that got me into the programme, because they said it would work alongside. I mean, I had various things years previously through the doctor being referred to help with the alcohol addiction, because obviously it has been throughout my life, and so maybe the 5-6 years before I actually ended up in hospital, I'd gone quite out of control. So yeah, I did already have previous attempts at sort of sobriety and things like that, but they'd been mainly sort of like based on the phased reduction type situation, which I just don't think works. It was based on me. At the time, I thought I only needed to get control of the drink. I didn't realise it was the one that was always controlling me. And it took that hitting the bottom to sort of finally, for the penny to drop, despite years of subtle hints, it never quite clicked in. So yeah, I think in the context of that, I think they were really good. As I said, they straight away they referred me to, I was taken in there. So it was all part of the moving on. They were always saying, we will get you into the second tier as soon as possible. And, they put it's a good spin that the hospital wanted the bed back, so we have to find you somewhere. I think for me, it was kind of combined, because it was all happening at the same time. So I didn't really distinguish the two. So I can't really say what would have happened housing-wise if I hadn't done it. But to me, it was all part of the general, because the people that I was speaking to, I can't remember who they were, but, they were always putting quite a positive spin on, if you can do the 12-week programme, you can get yourself sorted out. So it was always quite a positive, but they were always kind of done hand in hand, because it was all through, and the accommodation for me was through the same organisation. So there was never really a distinction. For me, it was all part of the same sort of programme. Gotcha. It was all moving towards that final goal of getting your own place, being sober, the theory of going back to work and sort of moving on kind of thing. So, I mean, I've done that. I can't actually remember the name of the thing that did it, but it was actually in this building here. I did that for a while before. And then there was, like, at work, they tried to help with occupational therapy, things like that. So I'd kind of touched on it, but never really committed. Obviously, once you go to Oak Trees, it is the full abstinence programme, which was quite a big difference. But again, I wouldn't say I didn't struggle, but I knew it was all towards the ultimate aim of moving on. And it was the thing with at the time, again, with the sort of like the meetings and things like that. So it wasn't only them, it was other support sort of outside of it, and them encouraging you to keep in contact with your peers, so you've got that other level of support which I still have, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, that was strongly encouraged. With going back, I'm not sure if it was encouraged enough or it was made as big a thing as it should have been. But I mean, I was doing the sort of like the meetings, going for coffees and things like that with sort of the peer group, which was encouraged by sort of like So yeah, I mean, I was doing probably 5 meetings a week. But that was, again, it was a combination of getting the support, but also not being or like sort of sitting in your room, because there's nothing. They do have a community sort of TV room, as it were, but I didn't really feel comfortable going in there. Apart from meals, I didn't really want to stay there. So, the meetings were an easy outlet kind of thing. And then I was also introduced to the Never Give Up, which is the charity at the Belfry Hall. They used to always do the meal on Thursday night. So there was two of the people were volunteers there. So I went just because it was a Thursday night, there was nothing else to do, a couple of times for a meal, and then I ended up volunteering with them, which I'm still doing to this day. And I did find that a huge support, particularly over like the COVID and the lockdown and things like that. Online meetings, I just felt it'd be quite a weird alien experience sitting on your own talking about it. And so I didn't do any of them, but we still, through Never Give Up, we always did like a coffee morning type thing, Zoom, on a Thursday. And I think that kept me quite sane throughout it. It is a church group, and I don't believe in God and I don't go to church, but they are incredibly supportive of everybody in the group, no matter what. And they've started again now, sort of about 6 months ago. So I'll go there every Thursday, which I kind of fell into almost by accident, but it was one of the things they did sort of encourage doing the volunteering, things like that. So yeah, I definitely found a lot of support through that kind of thing. The meetings, I on the run up to my first relapse, I stopped going to the meetings, which is kind of the usual, and I stopped doing all the volunteering things. And then, as I said, there was a lot with the job centre, with work, with the housing, and it just all got to me where this time with the lockdown, with stopping doing the meetings, I didn't find it quite as difficult. I think I was in a much better place myself, and that I knew people when I had issues that I could contact and sort of talk to, kind of thing. So yeah, because at that time I was just on the basic universal credit. So when I was it was fine. There was no pressure. But the moment I left, there was pressure on there, to get back to work. And they referred me to employment agency. And again, just with my head at the time, because it just found me I felt I was getting pressured by them to find a job, but then the agency they referred me to were just completely rubbish, and they didn't seem to know what they were doing. I mean, I had weekly meetings with them in the attempt to get into work, and it was 4 or 5 weeks into it before they even sorted my CV out. And then I got a random phone call off of the woman saying, "Oh, we found the perfect job for you. 4 hours a week working as a cleaner at Clifton Moor." And I was like, well, I've no way to get there. And it just felt like they were trying to push me into it. It didn't matter, just anything, just get them off our books kind of thing. And that, and the thing with sort of like the housing and everything, I don't know, I just didn't sort of cope with it. Where now, because I've had help it was actually through it's weird how it worked, but it was kind of through the Never Give Up and people that used to work. I was put in touch with somebody that works as a volunteer at a store who looked into the situation with the job centre and filled out all the forms for me, because some of those forms, they're just absolutely crazy. I mean, I would like to say I'm quite an educated kind of bloke, but they just blew my mind some of the times. And you put the wrong thing down and, you can get in real issues. So that was a big weight off that she filled all the forms out, contacted the job centre, everything was sorted out. So I'm still, at the moment, I'm still not getting any pressure from them kind of thing. So it's just one other thing off the mind kind of thing. I don't want to mention names, but the girl that referred me there worked at the time, she no longer does. And she then moved on to Restore, so you know who I mean. And it was her that put me in touch with the lady that did all that work for me. So it was kind of a bit of change, a bit of this and a bit of that I kind of just ended up being referred to her, and she was really helpful, as I said. And so that all kind of happened just before lockdown. And then obviously there was the lockdown, but then within a few months of that starting, said, you need to start looking at the next move kind of thing. Because I think I'm my own worst enemy with anything. I'll just procrastinate. I'll just, but they were like, you need to. So, but though I didn't feel any extra pressure, it was just, I don't know whether it was because the money was sorted out and I didn't get stressed about that, or I was just in a better place myself. But, there was quite a few obstacles to overcome with the moving in. But, there was nothing that fazed me too much. I knew it would kind of get itself sorted out eventually. But that, I think that was because the biggest thing was at the time, or since I've been with the housing, is they seem to have a lot of staff changes. So it's very difficult to know who you're actually dealing with on a month-to-month basis. The time that I was there, most of the time it was with one woman, where we had a weekly meeting, caught up with what was going on, and then she left, and somebody else came in, and the times before that it was always, well, I think they're running your case, but it might be them, and you never quite knew who you were sort of dealing with. So when I actually came to move from into the accommodation, the person that was in charge of my case at the time, I think it was the first time they'd done it, so I'm not sure what support they got their end kind of thing, but it was all a little bit sort of hit and miss, particularly with the grants and stuff that you get. Like you get one for like the white goods, and you can get one for like carpets and things like that, where I think I had to push quite a bit to get those things done, because I think once I'd gone from that thought that I was moving from to my own accommodation, obviously addict's brain kind of thing, I wanted it done yesterday. So I don't know whether it was because it was their end, or whether it was just in my head. But a lot of the time I just had to sort of step back and know, because I moved into accommodation and it was going to be 3 months before you got carpets and things like that. But then you have to tell yourself it's better than sitting in some air for 3 months, because again, when I was there, I didn't really interact with any of the other residents. So it was quite a difficult thing, because I was on the top floor, I was in the penthouse suite type thing. So, I'd just come in, go upstairs, and then that was it kind of thing. And so I just had to compare, I was in the flat, didn't have any carpets, didn't have much furniture or whatever, but it was my own four walls kind of thing. So, in general, I think the transition through the 3 tiers has been quite good. I think the biggest issue, as I said, sort of their end, was the staff changeover, never quite knowing initially who I was to contact when things did go wrong. And at that time, there was a big issue over what's called the council tax, where I was getting letters from the council saying that I was owing them tax for something I shouldn't have been. And there was nobody that whenever I spoke to somebody, they would just say, don't worry, it'll be sorted. But nobody really just said, no, this is what we would do. So I just kept getting these letters constantly saying, you owe us hundreds of pounds kind of thing, which obviously at the time added to the stress of everything else, the job and all that. Well, them trying to put me back into work and things. So there was blips along the way, but I think the general system that they've got does work. And it certainly worked for me, and I know other people, those kind of systems do work. I would say I think having that, the continuity, but I mean that's just something, people leave jobs. It was just very unfortunate that the woman that I got to know quite well suddenly left just as I was moving, but that's just the way of the world. But that general thing of having the contact and knowing you can trust them and knowing that what they're doing, that they know what they're doing, would have helped a lot. But then again, it's myself, I struggle with authority in that way. I would never go into the office and sort of say, I need, I tried to contact them and I was always sort of fobbed off kind of thing. And I never really knew who I should be, because I was getting different messages from different people. So having that continuity through towards the end, I think made a big difference. I would say it definitely worked for me, the system that I have in place. So the only biggest thing was the not knowing who was in charge of my case, if you put it that way. So yeah, I mean that's the other thing, because I don't know, because when I moved into my own accommodation, the guy came round, to see me, and I sort of said at that point that I was fine on my own. So I said to them, so I don't know what the continuing support they offer is, and I don't know the level of that and how good it is, but that was something I said to them, because I felt in a good place and I had the support around me that I knew I could sort of do it on my own kind of thing. So yeah, that's, as I say, I've got the flat, it's all been decorated. Desperately trying to talk myself out of not getting a dog. But that's a different story. But yeah, I think I'm in general in quite a good place, and yeah, particularly compared to where I was lying in a hospital with absolutely no options whatsoever. Within sort of 2 years, it's quite a turnaround. So yeah.